Something interesting is happening. I'm a little bit of a political nerd. I like to study things like the history of democracy and the evolution of governments over the course of time and space through societies and cultures. And I really think we've hit an interesting time, especially with regard to technology and the impact that it can have on how we do government. Now, especially I think we're at a point where we're going to see whether or not technology can move us ever closer to or ever farther from the democratic ideal that your ancestors here in Athens set in motion 2.5 millennia ago. 2013 was an interesting time in Brazil. Even though Brazil had really come into its own and had lifted tens of millions of people out of poverty over the previous 20 years and had really emerged on the world stage as a rising leader, there was a lot of angst and a lot of dissatisfaction and a lot of concern and worry among the population in Brazil during this late spring, early summer in 2013 in Brazil. A long story short is in the government of Sao Paulo on June 1st, the government put forward an initiative to raise the price of bus fare by 20 cents. Now, this turned out to be a catalyst that would spark a vast storm of protest in the country over the coming weeks and months. What was interesting is that over the first few weeks, hundreds of thousands of people mobilized, and it reached the radar of the leaders and the presidents there in Brazil. Within a few weeks, it had gotten to the point where there was 2 million people across 100 cities mobilizing in protest of several issues. Now, social media, especially Twitter and Facebook, played a really important role, and the hashtag Muda Brazil, which means to change Brazil, emerged as the rallying cry for what this movement would be. It came to include, even though that the protests had started out as something that dealing with transportation, the rising cost of transportation, it ended up being more about health and education and crime and poverty and transparency, and even the perceived high cost of the 2014 World Cup. We saw that Twitter and Facebook played a pretty important role as a message creator, amplifier, and organizer. As a message creator, Twitter allowed a really clean, simple space for people to put forward and allowed them to put the hashtag Muda Brazil. As a message amplifier, it allowed networks and groups of people to spread this message from up and down and left and right all over the country, from the highest to the lowest levels. And as an organizer, you saw things like Facebook provide a space for people to express what they want to say where to go to say it, and then say where to go, and then go to say it when and where. Twitter and Facebook worked for a couple of reasons. One, that Twitter is very simple. It's a simple 140-character limit. Anyone with a keyboard and a screen, very, very happy to use it. Very easy, simple, and you can interact with the message that was Muda Brazil very easily. Twitter also worked because it's fast. Within a few days, as I said, hundreds of thousands of people had mobilized. Within a few weeks, millions had. Twitter also worked because it had reach. Now, what's interesting with Twitter and Facebook is that you can go from the highest levels, like the office of the president, down to the street level. Everyone enters the same rules. Everyone plays the same game. Everybody comes into the same framework. Twitter and Facebook have played an extremely incredible role over the course of the past few years, especially ranging from Tunisia to Egypt to Ukraine and Moldova, ranging from elections in Indonesia to India to the United States. There seems to be this general discussion about what it means to do politics and social media. One thing that I would say, however, is that broadcast is easy. As we've seen between protests and movements and revolutions, there's a deconstruction that broadcast results in. It's easy in that we've been doing it for years. What we've seen is that over the course, communicating from the few to the many and the many to the few, it's not that hard. We take a president or a social leader and they're able to disperse a message or an information down to the masses. We see that going up from the many to the few is not that hard anyway. What's been done is it's basically a petition. Things like Avaz and Change.org have done a really good job in collecting electronic signatures to send a message upward to those who have decision-making power. What we see also is that between movable type and 140-character tweet. It's the diffusion of information that matters. The difference between a news stand and a news feed, between a TV program and a video link, between a comment and a hand-delivered letter. We haven't really gone that far in terms of the fundamental nature of what communication does. What I would say also is that construction and engagement is hard. Apart from deconstructing a government or a system or a law or a policy through broadcast, we've done that for years. Whether it's through cave paintings or smoke signals or a homing pigeon or movable type printing press or a telegraph, TV, telephone, whatever it may be, we've all increased this level of efficiency to a point, but we haven't really addressed effectiveness. What I argue is that what we need is a few to the many, many to the few, multi-level exchange to create trust. Instead of having megaphones shouting at one another, we need to find a way beyond what Twitter and Facebook can provide to create a framework and a space for exchange to happen. The thing is that we need to take the simplicity of a tweet, we need to take the speed that Facebook and Twitter provide, and we need to take the reach that it currently has among the same rules and the same framework and the same space, and add a level of intimacy that essentially is a roundtable conversation where you're sitting across from one another with a drink in hand, looking at each other in the eye, hearing the tone and the voice, and developing the trust needed to actually move forward after the protest dies down. I work for a company called GovFaces, and over the past 3 years, we've been based in Geneva, Switzerland, and we're working to develop a mechanism to do this. We call it the community conversation. Now, we've done just that. We've taken the one-click simplicity of an upvote and added it in the top corner there. We've taken the speed of other social media networks and their ability to disperse and diffuse information and get it out, which is really, really important. We've also taken the reach in terms that everyone comes in on the same level playing this by the same rules. Whether you're a high-level politician, whether you're a journalist, whether you're an NGO, whether you're a business lobby group, a political party, or just an average citizen like us. Our goal, our big, bold, hairy idea is to put every politician in the world behind a GovFaces profile. Not just every politician, but as I said, every political actor within the 3D political landscape. We want to see what it can do for democracy and what it can do to allow us to engage better and construct and reconstruct through engagement instead of just broadcasting and deconstructing. Now, I was sitting on a terrace this morning with a cup of coffee in hand, looking out over Athens. And I was really inspired because I was absolutely fixated on the Acropolis. And I was sitting there thinking how much those walls have seen, literally from the birth to incubation, rise, growth, fall, and all the challenges that democracy had faced in this very place. And I really wondered, what would happen and what those walls are going to say over the course of the next 2.5 millennia about this moment right now that we're sitting in, and what impact technology will have on the growth and evolution of democracy. Thank you.